सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। हरि ओम, salutations to all. So, what is the foundation of Sanatana Dharma? The fundamental book of Sanatana Dharma is what? The Vedas. Who wrote the Vedas? Good. Don't say Vedavyasa wrote. He compiled it. See, there is a lot of misconception, and for many decades and centuries we have believed what we have been told, that the Vedas are written by nomadic, barbaric people who came from outside India. They are called Aryans. From Central Asia they came and they settled down in the north, and they pushed the inhabitants of this land into the south. These Aryans were fair-skinned people, the Dravidians were dark-skinned people. So these fair-skinned people have pushed the dark-skinned people down. And then they were in love with nature, so they wrote the hymns. So the first portion of the Veda is the hymns describing glory of nature. And they wanted to fulfill lots of desires, so they invented many rituals. So the first portion of the Veda is called Karma Kanda. Karma Kanda is Samhita and Brahmana portion. Mantra or Brahmana portion, that's what it is. And they invented all these methods and then the rituals, and then they were doing and propitiating some gods, which is imagination of their mind. And some of them who got fed up with these rituals, they went into the forests and they started meditating. So they discovered the Aranyaka portion. Aranyaka portion has meditations, subtle meditations to make the mind single-pointed. And some of them went ahead of that also. They wanted knowledge. So they came to the Upanishad portion, Jnana Kanda. So Karma Kanda is Mantra and Brahmana portion, Upasana Kanda is Aranyaka portion, and Jnana Kanda is the Upanishads. And now and then they used to have meeting of all these scholars, of all these masters, and then they printed the Veda. So they will try to date the Veda also and try to bring it as close to the birth of Jesus Christ. And we have been believing this. So if I ask you which is the oldest Veda, what will you say? Say what you know, don't worry. Rig Veda. How many years old? 5,000 years old. You see? So historians will try to date everything and make us feel then that only is real. But our culture doesn't say that. And then another thing they say is there was no country called India. Bharat. There is no country called Bharat. It is all kingdoms and kings were fighting with each other. There is no one country called Bharat. So this whole idea that there is Bharat is a myth. There was never Bharat. There was all kingdom, and each one fighting with each other. So there was nothing called Bharat. Now this is the view of the historians. And we have read this. So we also are conditioned to believe this. Okay, Veda is written by some people. It can be dated. Oldest Veda is Rig Veda, 5,000 years old. 7,000 years old, somebody will say. But what is the view of Veda itself and the Acharyas of Sanatan Dharma? Any science, we should read the experts of that science, or we should read somebody else who is trying to document it without even coming here. Who is the expert in that science? Who is native? Who is there here? Their views we have to read, no? So what does our culture say? First and foremost, this country is called Aryavarta. The meaning of the word Arya is not Aryans who came from outside. The meaning of the word Arya means a gentleman. Aryavarta, and people used to address each other as Arya throughout the country, not only in the North India. Arya means a gentleman. One point. So this culture has not come from outside. You see, the strange thing is this narrative is applicable in all the countries which these British people have dominated. Australia, you see the Aborigines and their culture, so they will make them feel inferior and then they will superimpose their culture. Same thing in Africa, same thing in India, everywhere. This is called what, cultural imperialism. Imposing one's culture on the other, making that person feel that your culture is inferior, lower, you are superstitious, you have blind beliefs, and till today we are suffering from that or not. How much we feel our culture is superstitious, there is no logic to it, simply we are doing something. On one hand, the beauty, the value, the glory of this culture is put aside. On the other hand, wrong notions have been put in. And on the third hand, we ourselves have lost the meaning, so the decadence has happened. So all this put together, now one doesn't know what is real, what is not real. One got confused. So one has to understand very clearly that we have to rely on the people here. So first and foremost, there is enough evidence to prove in our scriptures and our other historical things. Today it is enough and more proved that Aryan invasion did not happen. Genetics proves it, linguistic proves it, scriptures prove it, literary evidence proves it, archaeology proves it. Many proofs are there that Aryan invasion did not happen. There are no signs only of invasion. The oldest literature in South India, of Tamil Nadu, is Sangam literature. Sangam literature also does not mention anything of any invasion or people from north being driven down to south. None of that is there. So this notion that this culture came from outside and it is not indigenous is wrong, first. Second, definitely there is a country called Bharat, in spite of different kingdoms being existent. It's like saying that there is nothing called Bharat because we have some, now how many we are? 29 states? 29, no? 28 or 29? I forgot. Huh? 29, no? Can we say that because there are 29 states, there is no Bharat? Political boundaries of different states are different. How does it matter? The idea of one country was always there. How? culture binded all of us. From Kashmir to Kanyakumari, same gods are worshipped or not? Same festivals are celebrated or not? From northeast border to the west, not to the west that we know today, till that Kandahar and that Afghanistan, that whole place, Kailash was in our place, Baba. Today it has gone to China. How much we have lost our land? What was Aryavarta? Huge. Akhanda Bharat, that is called. Now, if we say Akhanda Bharat, people will say it is political ideology. It is nothing to do with political ideology. One party may have taken it up, but the fact is that it was there. Akhanda Bharat was there. And forget people coming from outside to our country. Our people have gone out. That also we have not been taught properly. We have always been taught that the Vasco da Gama and that Columbus, they are the great sea travelers. How is Columbus a great sea traveler? He wanted to find Bharat, went and found America somewhere and tortured those people there. Our people used to travel to Southeast Asia, to Middle East, exporting spices, building huge. Who built the biggest Hindu temple in the world? Where is it? Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Who built it? The Chola kings built it. Going from here. So, people have not attacked us from outside and brought this. People have not come from outside and brought the culture here. It is indigenous culture. 1. 2. There is a Bharat, no doubt. Vishnu Puran itself gives a shloka for it. That what is Bharat? There's a beautiful shloka. I will put it on the WhatsApp group. I don't remember right now, but it means that from Himalayas till this oceans, this whole land is Aryavarta, is Bharat. So, there is the idea of Bharat which is there. Culturally we are one. Which language united us? Sanskrit. Today we may not be conversant with that so much and we are speaking in a different language and all that, but Sanskrit united and there were many other languages also existing. But what united us was Sanskrit language. The Ved Pathashalas, etc. across the country. There may be different shakhas, but Vedas were studied across the country. Similar objects were worshipped. Shivalinga is worshipped in Kashmir, in Northeast, in West, in South, everywhere. Same symbols. Kings may be different, languages may be different, the way of dressing may be different. But what united us was our culture, Bharatiya culture. And that Bharatiya culture is Adhyatmik Samskriti, not Bhautik Samskriti. We were prosperous, no doubt, but what united us was the unity of the vision, spiritual knowledge that united us. And it is not that conferences never happened. Yes, conferences did happen. Kumbh Mela once in 12 years, Mahakumbh, Ardhakumbh, all these great saints coming together, discussing with each other, and people exploring various spiritual options. All that happened, but Vedas are not written because of those conferences. There are wrong notions people bring in our head. Vedas are definitely not written by human beings. So we have to know these facts very, very clearly. That Vid means knowledge. And last time we saw that Veda is Apaurusheya. Why is it Apaurusheya? Because it is revelation. See, there is always this debate between revelation and logic. Some people will say intuition and revelation is the method of higher knowledge. That when the ego is put aside, when the mind becomes tuned with the Supreme, the knowledge reveals. That is the method. Some people say, no. It is a result of logical deductions. Proper logic has to be used, and because of this, because of this, and hence, this is the conclusion. Now this debate can go on between logic and intuition, which is greater and how knowledge comes. But what is important to understand here is the nature of the knowledge that we are talking about here is not finite knowledge. No amount of logic can reveal the infinite to us. And the Upanishad themselves say that. Naisha tarkena matirapaneya. This knowledge cannot be experienced by any amount of logic. Point one. Point two, those who have a lot of sense of doership, they will want to apply only logic, and they will say, it is only because of my logical deductions and conclusions, this is the knowledge. Or any other master, any other thinker. It is because of their logical thinking that this knowledge has been brought about. Those who are able to put aside their ego, and they say that when I was not in that ego state, when my mind, I had lost myself completely, become one with that universal truth, knowledge is revealed. That is power, that is the mode of intuition, which science also calls it as revelation. Vedas are also revelations. So one is because of our own sense of doership. Those who have strong doership will always want to believe in only logic. See, it is not that those who have less doership are illogical. It's not like that. They also use logic, but they transcend the boundaries of logic. And they don't ascribe this to their doership, ki I have discovered this. What do they say? This was revealed to me. Like Vishwamitra Rishi never went around saying, I am the discoverer of Gayatri Mantra. Gayatri Mantra revealed to him. As it is revealed. That we saw last time. So one is apaurushaya. And it is also apaurushaya because our senses are very limited. Now one question is, what is the subject matter of the Veda? The main subject matter. What is Veda having actually? Veda is a manual of life. It has everything. Artha, Kama, Dharma, Moksha, everything is there in the Veda. How to live life is there in the Veda. How to earn livelihood is there. How to earn prosperity is there. How to enjoy is also there. Everything is there. It's a complete book of life. And what not to do also is there in it. How people follow adharma, that also is there. Chaura Vidya also is there in Veda. How to steal. And what will be the consequences of that, that also is there. Because it's a book of whole life. But is that the main objective of the Veda? So there are 4 Vedas. By 4 Vedas we mean 4 books. Knowledge wise it is 1, but book wise it is 4. Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharva Veda. Then there are Upavedas also. What are the Upavedas? So Ayurveda, the science of life, health. Dhanurveda, warfare. Gandharva Veda, music and dance. Arthashastra, economics. And Sthapatya Shastra, architecture. These are the Upavedas. 4 Vedas, 4 Upavedas. The Arthashastra and Sthapatya Shastra get combined. So Ayurveda, Dhanurveda, Gandharva Veda and Arthashastra plus Sthapatya Shastra. 4 Upavedas. And 6 Vedangas, the limbs of Veda, so that if I study these 6 limbs, then I can understand Veda properly. What are the 6? Shiksha, Kalpa, Nirukta, Jyotisha, Chandas and Vyakaran. 6. Shiksha is phonetics. Kalpa is rites and rituals. Nirukta is like terms and terminologies and glossary. Vyakaran is grammar. Then Chandas is the science of prosody or meters. You know which mantra is in which chanda, so how to chant it, chanda. And Jyotisha is astrology. These 6 limbs have to be studied to understand the Veda properly. So first one should study these 6, then come to study the Veda. These total 14, 6 limbs of Veda plus 4 Veda plus 4 Upaveda, these are 14. This is called Chaturdasha Vidyasthan, the 14 abodes of knowledge. Nomads can write all this. Barbaric people can write all this. Highly advanced people who have thought, who has seen, who has meditated. Proper, fantastic science this is. Veda. So this is our cultural heritage. The foundation of our Sanatan Dharma is this Veda. But these 14 are meant for what? The main two topics of the Veda, apart from whatever else, livelihood and artha, kama, all that, the main two topics are Dharma and Brahma. Because these are not tangible. Dharma itself is not tangible. What is right and wrong? How will we know? Even today that confusion is there or not? One still thinks there is nothing called right and wrong. If I look at this building, by looking at the building, can I find out who is the owner of the building? Legal status of the building, how will I find out? I have to go to the document. Same way, when I look at people, when I look at objects, things, creation, how do I know what is right, what is wrong, what is legal, what is illegal, moral, immoral? I cannot know just by perception. It requires certain clarity of thinking, certain valid means of knowledge to be used. So Veda helps us to understand what is dharma, what is adharma. And the Vedic principles are adapted in the Smritis. So one important point of the Veda is Vedas are the eternal principles. Those principles, how to live in our life, in our context, those eternal principles adapted, they are called Smriti. See, the Shruti-Smriti combination is a beautiful combination. Because of this, our culture is so flexible. Shruti is the eternal principle which will not change. Like gravity, etc., they will not change. They are eternal principles. Smritis are the application of certain eternal principles like right and wrong. How to apply in certain contexts the right and wrong. The Smriti will tell us. Like Bhagavad Gita, eternal principle is war and violence is bad, should not be done. Himsa should not be engaged in, eternal principle. But in Bhagavad Gita context, that adaptation happens. If you don't fight here to do your duty and protect righteousness, then that is wrong. So that is called adaptation. So Yajnavalkya Smriti, Parashar Smriti, Manu Smriti, so many Smritis are there. They teach us how to live the eternal principles in our times. For our times, which is the Smriti that we should be following? Bhagavad Gita is the simplest. Just follow that. You can follow others also if you like, but Gita is the simplest for us. Now, because of this Shruti-Smriti combination, our culture does not become fanatic. See, Vedic times, people used to do lots of yaga, yajna, havan, elaborate rituals. Are we doing today? No. Ishta Devta Upasana we do, and we are so flexible. Gayatri Mantra, traditional way of Gayatri Mantra is stand in water, waist deep, facing the sun, chant the mantra, then hold the water in the hand and offer arghya to the Surya. Early morning one has to do. Now we say today river only is not there. Where to go and stand in river? Waist deep, impossible. So what to do? Go up on the terrace, take water in the lota, face the sun, offer. After some time you will say this water also is becoming very expensive. Water is not there. So what will we do? Mentally offer it. Adapting. There is no fanaticism there. Because Shruti and Smriti make us so flexible. So now Dharma is intangible. Brahma also is intangible. That which is beyond body, mind, intellect. How will that be known by the body, mind, intellect? So we need another source to reveal that to us. So Dharma and Brahma, they are the main topics of Veda. Now that which is intangible to the senses and to the mind and intellect, how will mind and intellect write it? The source of this mind and intellect is Brahman. Can Brahman write about mind and intellect? Not possible. So it has to be revelation. It cannot be a logical conclusion. Logic may be there in it, but it is not a logical conclusion of a few people who have thought and then they have written the Veda. Hence, what we have to know is this: the topic of the Veda itself is so subtle that that topic of the Veda itself makes it a Paurushaya. Human being cannot write. Third reason is our senses have limitation. And that senses, the limitation that we have to know. That is called Karana Apatatvam. Karana means instrument. They are very limited. What we see with the eyes is whatever is perceptible to the eyes, is that much alone real? Yes or no? Yes. What I can't see with the eyes, is it not real? Infrared rays I don't see, that means they don't exist. Ultraviolet rays I don't see, that means they don't exist. No. Dogs, I am told that dogs cannot see color at all. So that means color does not exist? No. Senses have a lot of limitations. Sky we are seeing blue. Is it blue? Ocean we are seeing blue. Is it blue? So senses have a lot of limitations. So we cannot trust only the senses and believe that whatever senses show, that alone is real. A person who believes that, that person is called what? Pashu. Pashyati iti pashu. One who believes only what one sees, that person is called Pashu. A human being can understand so many things which are not tangible, not visible. At the buddhi, sukshma buddhi is given. So one is Karana Apatatvam. Second is Buddhi Dosha. What is Buddhi Dosha? Raga and Dvesh comes in our mind. So when Raga and Dvesh comes, our perception also becomes colored. Because of Raga, if somebody towards whom I have attachment tells me something, I will believe it to be true. I may not even make enquiries. And it may be harmful actually to me, but I will not even consider that harmful. Like Shakuni was a traitor, but Duryodhana never saw him as a traitor because attachment. And Dvesha, when it comes, even if somebody is telling the truth, because I have Dvesha towards that person, I will not listen to that person. So that Buddhi Dosha is Raga and Dvesha is there. And third is called Vipralipsa, misinterpretation. Buddhi can twist anything anyhow. Especially once we learn logic and once we learn Vedanta, no? We can twist anything anyhow. Happily we can twist. That famous story is there, no? That the teacher took alcohol in one glass and put two worms in the glass. And the teacher asked everybody and the worms died. So the teacher asked, what did you learn from this? And what the student said, that if you want to destroy the worms in your stomach, drink alcohol. That is the learning. That is called misinterpretation. What the teacher wants to convey is this is harmful to you, but ulta, viprit jnana it is called. What one wants to teach, what one learns. So buddhi has all this dosha. With all this dosha, how will buddhi write anything or know anything about Brahman? It is not possible. So when we say Veda is apaurushaya, it is not a composition of human being. The revelations that happen are not influenced by these three: limitation of the senses, prejudices of the mind and intellect, false interpretations and misinterpretations. The revelation is free from these. Why? Because the ego has been surrendered. At that time revelations happen. So it is apaurushaya. Veda is apaurushaya. Because the subject is apaurushaya. Because the instruments have limitations. And human being cannot write. Cannot get this knowledge by their own imagination. No. It is anadi, beginningless. It's very interesting that is. Why is the Vedic knowledge anadi? Remember last time we said that the Vedas are the breath of Bhagavan. Because the knowledge of the Veda is that using which the creation also is made. That is the beauty of it. Vedic knowledge remains in the Lord whether creation is there or not there. So even if there is no creation, Vedic knowledge remains. That's why it is Anadi and Ananta also. And today Ananta science also proves that every single word and every single thought that we think remains in the space. If somebody can tune up to that, you can get it. So if anybody is able to tune up to Lord Krishna's thought frequency, whatever he said in the battlefield, in the Gita, as it is, we will be able to know. That is how it is. Sound has that once it is created, it will remain always. It is indestructible. In the form of sound vibration, it will just remain in the ether, in the space. Vedic knowledge is a revelation like that. Thought revelation, and then it was compiled. So it can remain. Even if the whole creation dissolves, it will remain in the Ishvara. Because the nature of Ishvara is Jnana. So Vedic knowledge is Anadi, it is Ananta. But again, because it is Anadi and Ananta, we should not think that Bhagavan will take care of it. And we have no responsibility towards it. No, we have a responsibility to preserve, propagate, and live this knowledge. It is also Anadi because if this Vedic knowledge was not there, then Ishwar becomes Ajnani. Ishvara is not Ajnani, Ishvara is Jnana Swarup only. And using the Jnana only, Ishvara has created this whole universe. So Vedic knowledge is Apaurushaya, it is Anadi, it is Ananta. So it is not books. And this division that we see of mantra, Brahmana, then Aranyaka, then Upanishad is a very general division. It is not watertight compartments. This Ishavasya Upanishad itself will prove that. Ishavasya Upanishad is found in the mantra portion. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is found in the Upasana portion. And many other Upanishads that we know, they are in the end portion of the Veda. So Upanishads are spread through the Veda. This division is a very, very general division just for us to understand. It is not a watertight division because this is what has been, this is a cause of a lot of confusion. Karma Kand is there, Upasana Kand is there, Jnana Kand is there. These three Kands are to help us to understand a scheme of evolution, and for that this has been made. That a person who has lots and lots of desires, who wants to fulfill desires, will do it through action. Somebody who has seen through action, worked in the world, achieved success, name, fame, prosperity, progeny, everything, has understood that in spite of all this, I still feel limited. That person says, now karma will not lead me to this. So we always say wants get fulfilled, but wanting does not get fulfilled. So the wanting remains, only the object of want changes. So one who has seen through this properly comes to the next stage. He says, enough of this now, let me turn within. Happiness is not there outside. Permanent happiness is not there outside. What is outside? Temporary pleasure. I have seen enough of the temporary pleasure. That person who has seen through it, that person turns within. So the Aranyaka portion, so subtler forms of meditation to make the mind single pointed. And pray to the Devatas, meditate on the Devatas, form, qualities, integrate the mind. And quieter the mind becomes, more subtler joy one experiences. So one uses meditation. This meditation is not what we understand in Vedanta. This meditation is using a support to make the mind single pointed, ekagrata. This is for that. But this also will not dissolve the sense of individuality. Because ignorance is the root cause, and that one has still not known. That person comes to Upanishads, seeks a guru, asks the question that I have done all this, still I feel bound, I still feel limited, please help me to cross over this ocean of samsara. That person studies the Upanishad. That person is adhikari. So that is a Jnana Kanda. So this is a broad division for us to understand the scheme of evolution so that we know where we are and how to move ahead. Veda is not written just like that, cut. That this much is karma portion, this much is upasana, this much is jnana, exclusive portions. No. So this much is about the introduction. Now the conflict always remains, is this, should I act in the world, or should I renounce the world, or should I stay in the world and yet renounce? Combination. So this Ishavasya Upanishad, in the introduction, Shankaracharya ji has written certain things before the first mantra starts and the commentary starts. So what does he say? This Ishavasya Upanishad is found in the Shukla Yajurveda. And it is in the mantra portion. And there are 39 chapters before this Ishavasya Upanishad. Ishavasya Upanishad is the 40th chapter. These 39 chapters are all karma kanda, of how to do rituals, and with rituals what benefit we will get. Because the long rituals were done that time. Propitiate the Devata, do the offerings to the Devata, seek the blessings of the Devata, and with their blessings one will get what one wants. So there is one belief in the karma kandis. The karma kandis are called mimamsakas. And what is their belief? Amna yasya kriyarthatvat. That is their belief. Amna yasya kriyarthatvat is a sutra. What does it mean? Every mantra must prompt me to do some action. If a mantra does not prompt me to do action, it is useless. Who believes this? Mimamsakas believe this. Who are Mimamsakas? They are ritualists. We may say, so what, Swamiji, they are ritualists, they may believe. What is it to do with our life? Majority of us are ritualists only. We all believe in doing only, no? At the end of the Upanishad, many will come and ask me, this is all okay, but what should I do? You are Brahman, if I tell you, and your nature is infinite. Okay, but how? What to do? You tell me something to do by which I will realize. We believe in action because we are so identified with the body that action leads to result. That is how I am programmed. Action is the cause, result is the effect. By doing action, some result I will get. I am programmed to think like that only. So anything that is helping me to act and achieve some result, that is useful. If a mantra is not prompting me to act, it is useless. You are Brahman. What action it will prompt you to do? Nothing. It is useless. But if it says do yajna, do yaga, do dan, do this, do that, that is useful. Because I can do something. Today also people say, no, this is all theory, but practical thoda batao. By practical they mean, give me method. What we saw earlier, no, Satyam, Ahimsa, Brahmacharya, those are all practical things. There is something to do in that. But here it is not to do, it is to be. be the infinite truth. Then what to do? Next question. And then those who are very intellectual, they love it. Don't do anything, just be. In meditation, just be. Don't sit, just be. And the mind wanders. So one says, now what to do? Just be. No, this being is not working. So one is very habituated to doing something. So this mantra says, Amna yasya kriyarthatva, the Mimamsakas. So don't think these Mimamsakas are of that time only. Today also we all are Mimamsakas only. Majority believes this only. And so what they think, that is Ishavasya Upanishad, which is there in the 40th chapter. So before this is Karma Kand, after this also is Karma Kand. So they say that this is an interval in between. Between two karmas, you want to relax, just chant Ishavasya Midam Sarvam Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagatyena Tyaktena Munjita Magrida Kasya Svidhanam. No need to do action. This is a filler. Just to chill. Because karma is very tiring, exhausting. So between two karmas, just chill. What to do? Chant Ishavasya Upanishad. So they will make this also into karma. What has to be done with this Upanishad? This is meant for chanting. Chant. Loudly you chant. After that, again start karma. Before that, do karma. In between, just chant. So, Amnayasya Kriyarthatvat. And what do they think? That any of these mantras which are there, which they don't prompt us to do anything, they are talking about Brahman. There is no subject matter of this only. So, there is no subject matter. It does not create any act, it does not prompt you to do any action. And because it does not prompt you to do any action, there is no result. And because there is no result, there are no takers for this. So there is no adhikari for this. And they gave the example, it is like the sixth finger. What is the use of the sixth finger? It is just an obstruction. If you want, you cut it and throw it. So these Mimamsakas tell like that. That there is no Vishay, there is no Adhikari, there is no Karma, there is no Sambandh, there is no Karma Phala. It is useless. These mantras are not required only. But chalo, if they are there, we will just chant. To clarify this, Shankaracharya ji wrote what we call a Sambandha Bhashya, the introductory portion of the Ishavasya Upanishad commentary. And what did he say in that Sambandha Bhashya? He said, who is a adhikari of karma? Adhikari means a eligible person. Who is eligible for karma? One who thinks he is limited, he or she is limited. One who thinks one is limited entity, I am Mr. So and so. That person is adhikari for karma. Second, why does that person think I am limited? Because one thinks that I am the body, mind, intellect. One who has strong sense of body, mind, intellect is adhikari for karma. Third, because one thinks I am body, mind, intellect, there is a strong sense of doership and enjoyership. Kartrutva and bhoktrutva is there. And because kartrutva, bhoktrutva is there, one is doing karma. Now when one is doing karma, then one will want to experience the result. So one whose happiness depends on the results. These 4 points. One who has this very strongly, one who thinks I am this jiva only, who thinks I am this body, mind, intellect, who has strong sense of doership and enjoyership, and who depends on results for their happiness. That person is a adhikari for karma. Please remember, this is not condemning anybody. This is for us to know which level I am. If I have these 4 strongly, that means I need to do karma, but with an attitude of dedication. Because karma, if I do, we saw that cycle last time, that tendencies lead to desire, lead to thoughts, lead to action, lead to result, which again strengthen the vasanas, the tendencies. And now to exhaust that, what will happen? I have to take birth again and again. Now, if I do karma like that, I will keep taking bodies again and again. The only way to break that cycle is what? Do selfless karma, dedicated action. So the karma kand portion, as I do rituals and then I start dedicating it to a higher cause in yajna bhavana, when I do, then the mind will become purified. So it is not a question of whether I should do karma or I should renounce karma. Question is, am I ready for what? Karma. So there are three of these now. One who is a karma pradhan, one who is jnana pradhan, and one who is samucchay. Karma jnana samucchay. Actually, it is not karma jnana samucchay, it is only karma upasana samucchay that we will see in Ishavasya as we go along. So somebody who is ready for karma has to do karma. Selfish, desire prompted activities one should do. There is nothing bad about it. But see the limitation of that, ki how much selfishness causes stress, tension, agitation, worries, dissipation. Then one says, no, I cannot stop acting, nor can I act selfishly. Now what is the way out of this karma then? Act selflessly. That person is karma adhikari, who has to do karma yoga. Through karma yoga, what will happen? This will all reduce. All these four factors will reduce. Doership, enjoyership will reduce. Dependency on result will reduce. Thinking that I am BMI will reduce. Sense of parichinnata reduces. I am limited will reduce. So if I am doing karma yoga, the yardstick of measurement is if I am progressing or not is this. That is this reducing or not. Otherwise I am only doing karma. Action I am just doing. And that will further create karma bandhan only. Until the bhavana doesn't come that this is dedicated to a higher purpose, I am doing it for the Lord. Lord is the highest. Then I want nothing out of it. This dependency on result will go. Doership, I am not the karta, Bhagavan is the karta, that will go. Prasada buddhi, enjoyership will go. That will all become very, very thin. That person is adhikari for Jnana. So, people who are karma adhikaris, they believe only in karma. And Shankaracharya ji says that just because somebody is at this level does not mean that there is no self. Why is this required? The knowledge of the self. What will the knowledge of the self do? The jiva feels bound, the jiva feels limited, the jiva feels the karma phala, the agitations, all that the jiva feels. Brahman is opposite of that. The self is opposite of that. The self is non-doer, non-enjoyer. Self is not limited. So self is unlimited. Self is not the BMI but the illuminer of BMI. So the characteristics of the Jiva and of Brahman are opposite. And what will happen by knowing this? So the Vishay, the mantras have a Vishay. Karma Kandi say there's 18 mantras of Ishavasya, they don't have any Vishay. No, the Vishay of this 18 mantras is what? Self is the Vishay. And that self is nothing but Brahman, the infinite consciousness. That is the Vishay of Upanishads. So Vishay. Then, what is the result of knowing this? They said no result is there of this. Simply we have to chant. If I know Brahman, what will be the result? The result is two. Destruction of ignorance and effects of ignorance. Both will be destroyed. and which will lead to the realization of bliss. So the result is there. The cause, the root cause of sorrow, karma cannot remove, because karma is only an effect of ignorance. You remember ignorance cycle. Ignorance leads to false identification with BMI, leads to incompleteness. No amount of karma I do will remove my sense of incompleteness. So karma kand as well as karma yoga, selfish desire prompted activity, sakama karma as well as nishkama karma, cannot remove incompleteness. Why? Because they cannot remove the doer, Mr. So and so. They can only minimize the ego. They cannot eliminate the ego. And that minimizing of the ego is required, no doubt. That is the preparation for Jnana Kanda. But it will not eliminate the root cause of sorrow. So if somebody wants the final bliss, I want to experience infinite bliss, permanent happiness, absolute peace, unconditional love. If that is my demand, no amount of karma will lead me to that. That I have to be very clear about. And who can be clear about that? Only person who has done karma and seen through it will know it is not possible. Otherwise, for others, it will only be one intellectual thought. In satsang, it sounds very nice. Karma doesn't lead to anything. As soon as that is over, where am I going? Do karma. One who has understood very clearly, it will not lead to this. The craving for doing karma and achievement and running in the world, all that will stop. I may go and do some action to sustain this body, to study, to meditate. Those things are nothing wrong in that. But this craving, that when I do this, then I will become successful, then I will feel happy, then I will feel that I am an achiever, that goes. Because even if I become a great achiever, I am still limited only. One who has seen through that properly, that person is ready to drop it. So the result is there, and one knows that the supreme happiness cannot be attained by any amount of karma. It can be attained only by Brahma Jnana. So Vishay is there, is Brahman. The Phala also is there, and that is the Nivritti of Avidya and its effects. If avidya goes, incompleteness goes, everything else which is with it goes. Now, who is the adhikari? Jnana adhikari. Who is the adhikari of Jnana? So, see in the Gita, Upanishads, everywhere the Jnana adhikari is pointed out beautifully. So, it's a proper science. This Mimamsaka dismiss it as nothing. Can you believe it? Which today also people are doing it. Don't think that the Mimamsakas only did. So many of you are coming here. Na? Many of your society, family members must be asking, क्या तुम जा रहे हो इसके लिए? उपनिषद पढ़ने से क्या होने वाला है? Will it help in relationships? Will it make your house problems? It will solve your house problem. Will it help you to become successful? Can you earn more money with it? One will ask. And they will invite us also for talks like that. Vedant for success. To inspire people, we may go and talk on it also. But actually Vedanta is not meant for success or failure. Vedanta is meant to rise beyond success and failure to realize Brahman. Vedanta for harmony in relationships. Vedanta is telling you to drop all relationships, attachment, and realize one Brahman which is pervading everywhere. But Vedanta for relationship. Vedanta for success. Popularly one may do also, just to keep people inspired, and then through that they will come to understand that is okay. But Vedanta is not meant for any of that. So people who are Mimamsakas, they will always think like that is Vedanta is kya hone wala hai isse? Learn some hobby, learn some science, learn some skill, you can earn something, you can get something, you can go somewhere, become something. What will happen if you study Vedanta? What is they telling you? The whole world is an illusion. Arey, this is so real. And they are telling you it's illusion. They are brainwashing you. And if you are a kacha person, you will think correct. They are brainwashing properly. I don't know how I came into this. There you go. People here will say they are brainwashing. Then one doesn't know who is brainwashing whom. But one thinks properly, one understands very clearly that even today we think like this only. Because adhikaris for Jnana are very less. Who are the adhikaris for Jnana? See, one method to understand is one who has Vivek, Vairagya, Shatka, Sampatti, Mumukshutvam is adhikari of Jnana. Simplest. For us, in the Gita, in 6th chapter, what Bhagavan says, one who is not tempted by sense pleasures, na indriyartheshu anusajjate, meaning one whose mind doesn't get extroverted by thinking about sense pleasures. You may say, first point में ही हमारा तो wicket गया. Duck out on first ball. There will be levels, no doubt. If in the beginning I was tempted by hundreds of sense objects, today I may be tempted by some 20. And I can rise above that also. So it's not that अच्छा अब ये अधिकारी नहीं है तो हम next class से ईशावास्य में नहीं आएंगे. No, one can continue to study and apply in ways possible to become the adhikari. One who is not restless to work. Dynamism is there to work is fine, but there is no desperation to work. I can't sit quietly. Something has to be done. Many people are like that. They need to do something. If nothing, they will keep scratching the bench. Something has to be done. You can't sit quietly or bite the nails or cut the nail or something one has to do. Just listening, that's karma asakti. Something, keep doing something. So, na indriyartheshu anusajjate, na karmasu anusajjate, and one who has no fanciful imaginations. Sarva Sankalpa Sannyasi is called. This is in 6th chapter of the Gita. The shloka is Yada hinendriyartheshu na karmasvanu shajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudhastadochyate. That's the verse. Shankaracharya has not given this in his commentary. I am just saying here so that we are clear. Now, how many adhikaris will be like this? Following all the three perfectly, they will be very few. And it will always be like that. The Jnana Adhikari will be very few compared to Karma Adhikari. How many people do PhD? Are they in lakhs and lakhs people do? No. How many are in LKG? That percentage you compare to how many do PhD? PhD people will be very, very less. Does that mean that they don't exist? Does that mean that that subject is useless? No. So there is an Adhikari also. There is a Vishay also. And the study of that Vishay leads to a Karma Phala also. That person becomes free. So not all mantras need to prompt us to do karma. In fact, no matter what I do with karma, see karma, no, what karma will produce. Anything that I do with karma, the finite result will be only of these types. One is karma can produce something. So it is called utpadyam, production. What is not existing, karma will help to produce. Some product is not there. So now let us say this watch. Now you put some process and certain things and now this watch has got produced. It's called utpadyam. So karma helps to produce what was not existing. Combine certain raw material in a certain way, put some steps, produce. Second, Vikaryam. It can help to modify certain things. Modification. So now this watch itself, I can modify, change the strap, change the color, so many things I can do. So modification. Karma can help to produce something, modify something. Third is called samskaryam. It is called beautification. Add some more features to this watch. Make it a smart watch. That's called beautification. And fourth is called apyam. To attain or to reach somewhere. What was not attained, now I attain. So now when I buy this watch, suppose it is not this watch, but it is some, what is it called? Apple Watch. What is it now? 5? Which is the latest one? Not, watch is not 11, phone is 11. Watch is what? 5? Series 5? Something. I didn't have till now. Now I worked hard, I got some bonus, and then New Year came and some offer, and now I attained it. So what was not attained can be attained by karma. What was not produced can be produced. It can be modified. It can be beautified. But all this is applicable only to what is finite, which is not existing. Can this apply to infinite? Can I produce infinite? If I can produce infinite, it is not infinite. Because whatever I produce will perish. Can I modify the infinite? ब्रह्मन, कलयुग का ब्रह्मन थोड़ा बदलते हैं, चलो बोरिंग हो गया, सतयुग का ब्रह्मन अभी भी चल रहा है, बोरिंग, चेंज इट. No, cannot modify the infinite, cannot produce the infinite, cannot beautify the infinite, because it is infinite. No change can happen. And it is already present. It cannot be attained. Because it is infinite, it is already present. So anything that I do with karma can only lead to these 4 results. Any of these 4. Brahman cannot be in any of these 4 because it is already there. The only way to realize Brahman is through knowledge, not by any amount of action. Action can lead to these 4 results: production, modification, beautification, and achievement. Action cannot lead to infinite. Now, one who has understood this very clearly may use any of these for working in the world to produce certain things, modify certain things, but one knows very well that as far as realization of the truth is concerned, it is only knowledge which will help. Jnane naivatu kaivalyam. So the study of the Upanishads will lead to the ultimate realization of the supreme truth, which no amount of karma will lead to. And hence we must study the Upanishad. It is not a waste of time to study the Upanishad. Because Mimamsaka said it is a waste of time because it is not telling you to do something. See, if a statement tells you there is no snake, it is not telling you to do anything, no? But is that statement useful or useless? There is no snake. Meaning, I am talking in context of rope and snake analogy. Don't suddenly think he is saying no snake. There is no snake. There is only rope. This statement is not telling me to do anything, no. It is only telling me to understand, change my perception. Is it a useless statement or a useful statement? That you are telling now. Because you have studied Vedanta. In general, if you think about a Mimamsaka, they will say it is a useless statement. Because it's not telling me to do anything. Okay, there is no snake, there is only rope. So, Are Baba, that is what I am saying. I told na, this is karma asakti. Knowledge to put into practice is which type of knowledge? Knowledge can be put into practice to attain some result. For example, I know that I have to exercise. Okay, simple example. I have to exercise. Now that is a knowledge. Now till I don't put into practice, I will not get health. So that's what these four things are now. Knowledge to be put into practice to attain a result which is these four. But that which is infinite, how will that come by putting knowledge into practice, which means till now it is not there. That's what it means. Only after I put knowledge into practice will Brahman be realized. No. Brahman is realized even right now. Only requirement is what? Just wake up. Prepare the mind and realize that you, where you are, you will be only Brahman. There is no application of it at all. Does a dreamer have to apply anything to realize he is a waker? No, he has to wake up. Application is to prepare. So in preparation stage, you put all application. No problem. So what is the preparation we saw? Karma Yoga is a preparation. Do some upasana, make the mind single pointed, that is a preparation. Go to the teacher, ask a question, that is a preparation. Listen to the truth with a prepared mind, then realization will happen immediate. And if realization is not happening immediately, then reflect and contemplate. You will say that is also action. That is not action like this action. That is an action to destroy ignorance. That is not producing Brahman, that is not modifying Brahman, that is not beautifying Brahman, that is not attaining Brahman. That is only removing the obstacles to Brahman. Like the clouds get removed, sun will reveal. So action is not producing the sun, action is removing the cloud. So no amount of karma will produce Brahman, because Brahman cannot be produced. So when I know also, here jnane naiva tu kaivalyam. Knowing is realizing. Another way to understand this is, when I don't have something, it is called apraptasya prapti, okay? When I don't have something, then I have to attain it. So I don't have this mala, let us say. Now I have to work hard, go to the shop, give the money, get the mala. Now I have the mala. So what I don't have, for that I need knowledge plus action is equal to achievement. For anything which is finite, which I don't have, knowledge plus action will lead to achievement. Like I gave the example of health. Health I don't have right now. I need the knowledge of health, knowledge of exercise, then I have to apply, then I will get health. And I have to keep putting that action, exercise, I have to keep doing to maintain also. So this is called apraptasya prapti. Now, if the mala is already on my neck, I don't know it. Now I am searching everywhere. And I am turning the house upside down, fighting with people. Where is my mala? Who stole my mala? You must have taken my mala. Do I need any action? What I have to do? Somebody only has to tell me, Arey, mala is on your neck. The moment I know the mala is on my neck, what happens? Attainment. For praptasya prapti, knowledge equal to achievement. Knowledge is equal to achievement. There is no action required. The best example for that is the 10th man. 10th man, 10 fools went to cross a river. When they went on the other side, they lined up everybody and they said, let us count, because who has drowned, we don't know. Suppose somebody has drowned. And each one is counting and saying what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then all of them are sitting and crying, Arey, one man drowned, one man drowned. Then one wise man comes there and he tells them, all of you stand in a line. And he tells them to count, putting the hand on their head. He says 1, 2, each one puts. The 10th fellow puts the hand on his head. Everybody is wondering, Arey, he was the 10th man. They all go and hug him, Arey, we lost you, you were drowned, this, that. Then the wise man said, Arey, kya hai? So he reorganizes all of them. Again, he makes them count. Now suddenly the 10th man changes. So everybody becomes the 10th man. Then they realize ki arey, nobody was lost. We forgot to count. The moment they counted themselves, did they have to do any action? No action. Because they are already the 10th man. Each one is the 10th man already. This is the uniqueness of Brahmagyan. And this is so subtle. And that is why that we get confused all the time, because except this, there is no other knowledge where knowledge alone equal to achievement. In everything else, knowledge plus practice, application is equal to achievement. Only in Brahmagyan it is Jnanenaiva tu Kaivalyam. And that's why I'm saying that karma asakti is strong in all of us. That at the end of it, we will still ask what to do now. But the more I reflect on it, more I will understand that there is no doing. In Brahmagyan, there is no doing. Doing is all before. Here there is only knowledge. So these 18 mantras are to tune up our mind to realize this truth, which will remove the root cause of sorrow. So in fact, those other things, no, the 39 chapters are actually a preparation for this, if I do it properly. Many people think that that is more important and this is useless. But actually it is the other way around. Gaining this knowledge, nothing more remains to be gained. The Upanishad say it, the Gita says it, all the other books will tell you. Yal labdhva chaparam labham manyate nadhikam tataha. There is no greater gain than this, which will make me discover my infinite truth. That is this knowledge. That's why in Guru Stotram we chant, no? That Mannatha Shri Jagannatha Madguru Shri Jagadguruhu Madatma Sarva Bhutatma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. The knowledge is this, that the self in me is the self in all. And another line which says, Tattvajnanat Param Nasti. There is nothing greater than Tattvajnan. Because this Tattvajnan will lead to discovering that I was, am, will be Brahman alone. Nothing has happened. When we wake up from the dream, then we realize, no, nothing happened. I was lying on the bed only. One boy wake up like that. Suddenly he woke up in a shock. He was miserable. So the mother asked him, Arey, what happened to you? He said, I had such a bad dream. I was writing exam and then the question paper came, and writing exam, I didn't know so many answers and I failed. So the mother said, at least in the dream you could have passed. It is your own dream. You should control your own dream. At least in dream you should have passed. Now when that fellow wakes up, what does he realize? The dream class was a dream, the paper was a dream, his writing was a dream, his sorrow was also dream. It was illusory only. Where is he? He is lying on the bed happily. No amount of action he does to rectify, to solve the paper properly will rid him of the sorrow. What he has to do? Just wake up. So which is where it is that Ishavasya Upanishad is that Brahma Vidya. My objective of telling you so much is that this Shankaracharya ji has written this in his commentary because of the positioning of this mantra, of this Upanishad. Because it's a part of mantra portion, traditionally it is dismissed by people. Unless people like Shankaracharya ji and others who have not written commentary on this, we would not have even known that Ishavasya Upanishad is such a beautiful Upanishad. To what extent is the glory of this Upanishad? That it is said that the first mantra of the Upanishad, the entire universe may get destroyed, but if the first mantra of this Ishavasya Upanishad remains, the whole Sanatana Dharma can be revived. That is the glory of this Upanishad. And because it is in the 40th portion, 40th chapter, in the midst of Karma Kand, it would have easily got brushed aside. And only 18 mantras. And 18 mantras also in this, the two shakhas of this which are there, Kanva Shakha and Madhyandina Shakha. The Kanva Shakha has all 18 mantras. Madhyandina has only 15. So they should have just got brushed aside. But Shankaracharya ji is very clear that this is not to be brushed aside. In fact, this is what is to be known. And Karmakand is to prepare me for this. Now this much is the introduction. More we will take up in our next class, where we will take up the meaning of the word Upanishad and then enter into the Shanti Mantra proper. For today it is this much. Any questions in what we have done? Let me know. Yes? That is if we want to use them to prepare. Otherwise it is only rituals where you can fulfill more desires. See, that's why the karma kand after that is because not everybody will be wanting to do this. Na? They will still want to do karma. So their journey will continue. They will skip this portion. They will continue. That's why I'm saying it is not a sequence only which is put like that. If I use karma kand, then I prepare and then I come to Upanishad. That is being told by whom? The seekers of the Upanishads are saying that. Shankaracharya ji is saying that. But karma kand portion is to fulfill desire. So between fulfillment of desires, this Upanishad has come in between there. It's a revelation, no? So it has come. It's like our life only, no? Between fulfillment of desire, we come to satsang. Yes or no? Does anybody say कि अब सत्संग में आ गए तो अब हम क्यों जाएंगे वापस? We will not do any desire prompt. We don't do that because it's a gradual evolution. Is it possible to attain this state bypassing karma kand? Bypassing karma kand is impossible. Right now also we are doing karma only, no? Before the satsang was karma only. After satsang will also be karma. So karma kand, if you mean by karma kand, rituals. See, please remember, rituals is a symbolism here. To attain anything which is finite. There they did ritual, which is a formal ritual. Today we are doing our processes, no? What they call standard operating processes and all that. In a company you work and then you get some results and targets and achievement. So that is what is being done. Karma kand is symbolic of any action that I am doing to get a finite result. Now that is inevitable. Till I come to Jnana Adhikari, that portion is inevitable. Then you transcend by understanding limitation of karma and then doing that karma with karma yoga attitude, then become Jnana Adhikari. So that portion is not, one cannot skip that. Ritual, yes, you may not do a physical proper ritual, but some activity though will be there. No imagination of sense, the happiness in sense pleasure, that, coffee will give me happiness. So one broods now, one imagines. Some new car is there, some Audi, some 65 lakh car is there now. Now one imagines, I will sit in that car, I am going and people will be so thrilled. One imagines, and now that imagination creates a desire. Then I have to act for it. So that is superimposing happiness on sense pleasure. That is called samyak kalpana. That is a fanciful imagination. And because of that, then there is desire and then there is action. I just cannot drop karma. That is the problem with so many people who read the Upanishads, then they drop karma. And they are not ready for the Jnana. Now not ready for Jnana, left the karma, cannot do karma yoga, frustration. In the name of contemplation, one is sitting and imagining sense pleasure. Which is what Gita Bhagavan calls in 3rd chapter, mithyacharasya uchyate. Who has withdrawn from karma and senses, but in the mind is going on imagining sense pleasure. That is mithyachar. So if I am not ready for this, I will become a hypocrite. If I am ready for this, automatically I will drop karma. Like how we have risen about childhood toys. Does anybody have to tell us? Nobody has to tell. We just rise above it. That's what I'm saying. That is, their understanding is limited in that sense. If somebody is a pessimistic person, then you're depression. But one who has no attraction towards sense pleasure, in what context this is? Because that person has vairagya. If that person says you are not attracted to childhood toys, so you are in depression, that is stupidity. Why should I be attracted to childhood toys? For a man who has vairagya, the entire world is toys. He's in a higher state, he's not in depression. Person who is in depression is caught within the mind only. Uninterested, unenthusiastic, lost all hope. That is a depressed person. Here is a person who is striving for the highest. There is no question of depression in that person. It does not have restlessness to work, but has the capability to meditate. And no fanciful imagination, but steady contemplation on the self. So it is absolute opposite. Depression is a tamoguna person. This one is a person who is going beyond sattva guna also. They may look similar, no doubt. So if we just read this without a context, then you are right. The psychiatrist measure is a sign of depression, which is what majority think also, that if you come into spirituality, you will become unproductive, useless, So they are scared. It matters only for them. If this person is having vairagya, it doesn't matter. It's not for this person who has vairagya. It is only for understanding clearly, so that we don't have a misunderstanding and we don't stop coming to spirituality. And we don't stop others from going to spirituality. Because we are also scared. Especially our young people. Youngsters and all. If they go to spirituality, hare bapre. How much fear people have. Ki they'll become sannyasi. No.
Depression is still a state of mind. The person who has knowledge has strived to go beyond the mind. So depression doesn't exist first.
Yeah.
Any vikar of the mind doesn't exist.
No, but that is only after the person has gone beyond. This is adhikari level, is still in the mind, but a very high state of mind. One who is a Jivan Mukta, then there is no question. But who is still an adhikari, some people may think like that. So many people thought that Gautam Buddha is an escapist. He is not an escapist. He got vairagya and he went. And single-pointedly he sought the truth and he realized. Now one man realizing the truth, now just see, even till today, how many people are getting inspired by him? Person who is depressed, who gets inspired? Nobody gets inspired. So each one has to find out by themselves only. The criteria is very simple. What is the higher thing that I am holding on to if I have dropped the lower? If I am not very clear about what is the higher that I am holding on to and I have dropped the lower, then I am in limbo. Then I am in a problem. Okay. So for today we will stop here. Your homework is what? You had studied till what? The Ishavasya, the Shanti Mantra, no? You have done till 74. Read the Shanti Mantra again if you like, because that is what we'll be covering in the next class. And we may cover Mantra 1 also. So you read from 74 to 87, 74 to 87, just the first mantra commentary. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.